is up, everybody? Welcome on in. We will get going here in just 2 to 3 minutes. It's good to see everybody. What up? What up? Welcome back to the Sleuth Intuition channel. I'm your host, Patrick Vallejos, broadcasting to the world live from sunny Phoenix, Arizona. It's good to see everybody. Welcome on in. Today we will be diving into the Delphi murders of Abby and Libby. I think what we'll do today is we'll educate ourselves on exactly what constitutes an alternate suspect in the court of law. I gathered up some cases that I thought were, well, closely resembling what we have going on in Delphi with Richard Allen. Some of these cases, the main suspects were exonerated, and the third-party suspects were arrested. And then we're going to look at some cases where they try to bring up the argument of alternate suspects, but wasn't allowed. And we'll kind of see why, and we'll have a discussion. And through each case that we kind of touch on, we'll compare it to Richard Allen, and we'll see, well, and we'll just kind of talk about how it relates to the Delphi murders and Abby and Libby's case. Welcome in Renee, Cindy, She Warrior, the Red Queen. Red Queen, I hope you're feeling better. Hope you're doing okay. We're rooting for you. Sees through. Phil Bond, congrats on winning your Sleuth Crew merch. I'm glad you received that today. We're going to do another giveaway in about a week from today. So hopefully I'll see all you guys there. She Warrior, good to see you. Audra, welcome in. Jill, what's up, Jill? Patricia Warner, Zuzu, good to see you. Diamonds, what's going on? My guy Farmer, what's up? Shout out to all you hardworking mods who keep everything running smoothly. Shout out to you guys. Blind Squirrel, good to see you. Rain Dancer, Sherry Wilson says, why would judge allow anything? She's denied all things. She hasn't denied all things. She allowed the transfer of Richard Allen. Do you think she's biased? Jerry, good to see you. Welcome in, Veronica. Growing Crazy, good to see you. Good. Yeah, crawl out of that rock. Politics can be extremely toxic. You think true crime is toxic? Whew. Let me tell you. Don Spain, what is up? Welcome back. Welcome back, my friend. I hope you had a good vacation. Sure you got some stories to tell. Frank Meister, good to see you. All right, who did I miss? Stop that right now. Stop it. Stop it right now. Welcome in. Yeah, politics has only victims. Or predators, right? Has only predators. All right, so we'll get going here in just about 5 minutes. So I think we're going to start with the definition. You know, what a judge might consider a third party suspect or alternative suspect evidence. And we'll see how that relates to the Delphi case. And if you think, and once we go over all this information, go ahead and participate in the poll. Poll question is, will Judge Goal, I added an S there, so just ignore that. Will Judge Goal allow evidence of alternate suspects? Yes, no, not sure. I'm not sure either at this point. I think I'll be able to decide after we go through this information. Shout out to Frank. Thank you so much for sponsoring today's live stream with that super sticker. You guys make all of this possible. I literally spent probably 4 hours this morning putting all this together. So there's just no way that I would have found the time to do that or been in a position to spend the time to do that if it wasn't for the support that I get from all of you guys. Those of you who provide super chats, super stickers, but most importantly, those of you who have been donating to the Cash App. Very generous of you, and I appreciate all of you. You say denied? Sherry says no, she'll deny it. Tell me why, Sherry. Let's hear it. You think she's biased? I think she might surprise a lot of you and allow it in. I wonder if she can allow, bits and pieces of it. Melissa Wildcard, welcome in. Thank you so much for the members flex. Look at that. That's a pretty big muscle right there. 5 months. Thank you for supporting the channel. We try to stay busy. Stephanie, welcome in. I don't think she's biased. She doesn't even know Richard Allen. Yeah, but what about her pal Nick, Slick Nick? I thought they were like in the Freemasons together or something like that. T Lemon, good to see you. I wish I could send you a ton of money because I appreciate what you do a ton. Hey, I appreciate you being here. Good to see you, Ruckus Rocks. And that's not just in name only. Ruckus, in fact, does rock. Sherry, she sure knows the defense attorney's big battle there. Aren't they like Facebook friends? So she should be their pals, right? How you doing, Jerry? The 5-month flex. Impressive. So thank you, Frank, and thank you, Melissa Wildcard. Welcome in, TJ. Anna, welcome in. I think they have to be able to strongly connect third parties to the crime. Defense attorneys say there are ways to introduce the information indirectly at trial. Yeah, that is correct. And we'll go into detail on that right now. But yeah, I mean, that's the gist of it. So when we go over this information, we're going to be asking ourselves throughout the live stream, does this apply to Richard Allen, his defense strategy, and Abby and Libby's case, and what the defense is trying to do here? And you might be surprised, or some of this might just kind of confirm what you've already known or thought. There's a ruckus among us. Bring the ruckus. Bring the motherfucking ruckus. That's the Wu-Tang Clan. I should put that on one of my clips. That'd be tight. Cindy says she appointed Baldwin and Rosie, right? She must have held them in high regard. Yeah, it's nothing personal. But one thing that I'm finding in a lot of these cases is that the prosecutor is sealing the probable cause affidavit. In almost every case that we're going to talk about, the probable cause was sealed. Remember, the media tried to paint it as a very strange thing for Nick to want that to be sealed. That's just not true. T. Lemon says the female part of the Freemasons is the Eastern Star, so I guess we can check to see if she's in the Eastern Star. Well, I'm sure she is, right? And if this was a real conspiracy, they would all be in on it, except for Richard Allen, right? Even the defense team. And I could buy that because it doesn't even appear that they're trying to defend this guy. There's a conspiracy I can get behind. They're all in on it. What's up, Mustang? Renee, always good to see you. Who'd I miss? Hey, wife Lilith, good to see you. Looking forward to you, Farmer and Cryptex. I'll be in the chat for that one. Growing Crazy, welcome in. And thank you, Lilith. I don't know if she backed them into a corner. I think they backed themselves into a corner. And that's why we have the Supreme Court. So again, I think Gold did the right thing. She's like, this is what I'm going to do. And it'll most likely be bumped up to the Supreme Court. And then it all worked itself out. Checks and balances. Behold. Judge Gall, the 333,000th degree Freemason of the Eastern Star. They call her Shiva. Thank you, Growing Crazy. It says justice for Abby and Libby. I don't think that actually exists, but hopefully they can close the books on this. You got it, Farmer. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Mustang. Says justice for Abby and Libby. Right? No teams here. Not team defense, not team prosecution. We're riding for Abby and Libby and her family and friends. To get to them, they got to go through us.
But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again.
¿Me entiendes? Pick your rock and crawl in it. No, I'm more of the kind of guy who pokes a stick into each hole and flips over the rocks. What do we got over here? Wife, me too. Very excited. Both cryptics and farmers speak well and have good convo. Should be interesting. Yep, and they're both very respectful and they have speak of you in high regard. So, welcome on in. Cindy, Kitty, good to see you. Thank you for hitting that Cash App. You guys who have been supporting Melinda as well. Thank you guys. It will definitely come in handy. Audra, thank you. Justice for Abby and Livy. Welcome in, Mark Collins. All right, so we're at the 20-minute mark. Let's get this ball rolling here. So this is going to be from the Criminal Law Notebook from Peter Dostal. It's titled Alternative Suspect Evidence. We'll start here with general principles. Generally, the accused is permitted to adduce evidence tending to establish someone else as the culprit of the offense for the purpose of raising a reasonable doubt of their own responsibility. So, when it comes to the Delphi case, Richard Allen's defense team isn't trying to prove that it was a ritualistic murder or that Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, Elvis Fields, Johnny Messer, he's not trying to prove that those folks actually committed the murders. He's just trying to say, hey, look, our account of the events are just as convincing as what the prosecution is bringing forward. So that should create some kind of doubt. That's the way I interpret it. When considering alternative suspect evidence, also referred to as third-party evidence, it is not for the trier of fact to determine if the alternate suspect is the culprit, only whether the possible involvement of a third party raises a reasonable doubt about the guilt of the accused. As evidence can only be adduced if there is significant connection between the third party and the crime. Right? Is that applicable for the third party suspects mentioned in the Delphi murders? Is there a significant connection? I don't think so. Is it all very interesting? And I think just with a few pieces of solid evidence linking them there that day, oh yeah. But that hasn't happened yet that I know of. What a mess. Is that Gma? Grandma? Gma? 5 kiddos? What a mess, right? Yep. So they're shooting for reasonable doubt. They're not trying to prove, that these guys actually committed the murders. Because if they could prove it, they'd probably already be arrested. Factors. The assessment of admissibility balances a probative value against judicial effect. The court should consider factors including, and they give us 5 examples here. The danger the evidence will arouse the jury's emotions of prejudice, hostility, or sympathy. And I think that's falls under what the defense team is doing. And I think that's why I don't believe they will be allowed in. I don't think the evidence will be allowed in. But you never know. Number 2, the danger the evidence and any evidence responding to it will unduly distract the jury from the main issue in the case, which is the prosecution's evidence against Richard Allen. So I think once again, what's going on with the Delphi case would fall under that category, which would lean towards it not being admitted. Number 3, the likelihood the evidence will consume an undue amount of time, right? They're going to go in there and waste all this time explaining something that has nothing to do with the evidence against Richard Allen. They have 3 pages of evidence that they plan to present, or they would like to present, and none of it is attacking the evidence put forward by prosecution. Number 4, the danger of unfair surprise to the opposing party who could not reasonably anticipate the issue and prepare a response to it. And finally, the danger that the evidence will be presented in such a way that usurps the function of the jury. Farmer says, I don't see alternatives, but rather additions. And they would have to be, right? If that's Richard Allen's bullet and it was found on the 14th, that puts him at the crime scene, or at least his gun at the crime scene. And he's withholding information. If he wasn't holding that gun and he's not the bridge guy, he knows that somebody had his gun. Sherry Wilson says, Elvis Fields, the spitting on the girls, the Trooper Todd click. What about it? Elvis Fields never said he spit on anybody. He said, what if? And if he did spit on the girls, wouldn't they have his DNA? Right? Mark Collins, I thought they have to be able to prove they do. They have to be able to articulate that. Here, let's look at this. This will go to your comment here. The power to exclude defense evidence is narrower and constrained by the fundamental tenet that an innocent person not be convicted. They give some examples of some past cases here. R versus McMillan, 1975. Evidence directed to prove that the crime was committed by a third person rather than the accused must, of course, meet the test of relevancy and must have sufficient probative value to justify its reception. Consequently, the courts have shown a disinclination to admit such evidence unless the third person is sufficiently connected by other circumstances with the crime charge to give the proffered evidence some probative value. So there you go. Must meet the test of relevancy and must have sufficient probative value to justify its reception. Here's another example. R versus Grandinetti. This is sometimes known as third-party suspect or alternate suspect evidence. The requirement that there be a sufficient connection between the third party and the crime is essential. So do we have that in the Delphi case? I don't think so. Without this link, the third-party evidence is neither relevant nor probative. The evidence becomes relevant as probative if there is a significant connection between the third party and the crime. Right? Hey, good to see you, Ivy Rose. It's frustrating to listen to people act like the defense has the burden of proving Odinus did it. Yep, they definitely don't. They just have to connect them. If they can connect them sufficiently, and prove that it's irrelevant, then it can be added. The judge will most likely allow it to be shown. But I think they failed to do that. But yeah, they definitely don't have to prove that they did it. They just have to show that it's just as convincing as the case against Richard Allen. Therefore, it'll cause doubt. Right now, they don't have any evidence even putting them there that day. You know, they can do that with Richard Allen. He puts himself there. And the bullet will put him at the crime scene. Sounds like you're convinced, Sherry. I've never read one time that Elvis Field spit on anybody. If you can show that to me, I'll retract that statement. Good to see you, Joey. Welcome in. 61, you know what's. Yep. And we now know that the judge is going to allow them in, and they were not under duress. Even though Richard Allen may have made them appear that way, and they may not be good confessions, there's got to be something in there. That'll be for the jury to decide. Stephanie says Elvis's spit wasn't found. Yeah, you'd think we would hear about that, right? He would be in jail. He'd be right there next to Richard Allen. So why don't you ask that question? If he spit on the girls, wouldn't they have his DNA? Unless Richard Allen washed it off. What about that? The Saint, why we keep going over this old ground? Richard Allen is done, finished. Then go away, Saint. If you're not interested, I'll see you on the next one. Don says Judge Gold hasn't denied everything. She approved Allen's request to be moved to county jail. Exactly. Precisely. Sherry says, yes, he said, what if? Okay, well, what if? What if? Ask yourself that question. What if? And I do believe he confessed to his sister. But you can't call somebody special needs, low IQ, lonely, and then when he confesses to his sister, you forget all about that. You have to look at the human element. He's probably never gotten that much attention from his sister in a long time. But Elvis Field's become a viable witness or a viable suspect whenever it kind of leans or theories. Somebody passed a test that somebody told them second-hand info doesn't make them culpable. Yeah, and I believe his sister when they say, "Hey, you know, this guy confessed to us." I believe her. Just like I believe Amber when she says that Brad Holder said that Patrick Westfall was responsible. I believe her, but that doesn't mean that he's being truthful. Does that make sense? Yep. And we do our best to not be biased here, not to act like, we're not going to put on a suit and tie and act like we're attorneys. What a fucking joke. That fucking pudgy Australian motherfucker. I hope she lets it in, but I'm not sure they proved there is an adequate connection. Either do I. And also, we hear that it can't take up an unreasonable amount of time, undue amount of time. The likelihood the evidence will consume an undue amount of time. Right? You're going to go over here and you're going to talk about a whole list of third-party suspects, and you're not going to address any of the evidence against your client. You're going to waste the court's time, man. Sorry, can't do it. That's the way I'm leaning. What's up, Vic? Some people are desperate for a non-Richard Allen narrative. Yeah, and I don't understand why. I can understand Richard Allen and then plus this other group. But just to dismiss Richard Allen, why? That's really strange. Well, you keep bringing it up. course it wasn't found, but I'm going to keep talking about it as if it's irrelevant. Good to see you, Ziggy. I don't believe there are any others involved. I'm not sure. I am not sure. If there was, guess who's going to tell us? The guy whose bullet was found at the crime scene. Nobody's taking it personal. Just don't understand if you're sick of hearing it, why you're here. If I'm sick of hearing something, that means that I don't, and I have control over the fact whether I hear it or not. I won't hear it. Cindy, I'm asking if my spit was found on the girls, what would happen to me? Yeah, it's almost like he's asking, like, if you did find my DNA, and maybe that's all he thinks is DNA. Who knows, right? Sounds like he's trying to ask a smart question. Like, hey, I'm going to engage with the officer. Please don't leave me, you know? Can I do another interview? Don't leave me with my lawnmowers. That's all I got, man. Can you tell my sisters that I did it? They might actually call me back. And did he really confess to his sister, or did they just say suspicious things? I don't know. I think he actually confessed. I think they may have taken a polygraph. I know Amber did. That's true, Cindy. Hey, what's up, Brad from Outside of the Grid? Go check out that podcast. John Doe. Hi. I think Richard Allen is innocent. That's why attorneys make so much no's before trial. This reminds of Stephen Avery case. Just my opinion. You sound like one of those goals. A goal able. If you play dramatic music behind any story, I might believe it. Hey, what's up, Hiawatha? I believe she ruled on it today and is not allowing the defense. Oh, did she? If anybody has that, shoot me an email. Put it up on the screen. Okay, here we'll go to the last example here. The right of the innocent not to be convicted is dependent upon the right to present full answers and defense. This, in turn, depends on being able to call evidence necessary to establish a defense and to challenge the evidence called by the prosecution. And I don't think anything that they presented pertaining to third party suspects has challenged any of the evidence, in my opinion. What is up, CJK, TGIF? Happy Friday, everybody. Check out the big brain on Brad. Flock of seagulls over here. I agree with that, Sherry. They think they're so cool. Farmer, not sure why people give false info. It's like stolen valor as far as sim concerned. They want to inflate their narrative. Give it some substance. I don't know, Sherry. Why do people do what they do? You know, you'd have to ask him. People are weird. The Lawnmower Man. What a great movie. Hey, Fix Solves. We were just talking about Auntie Gall over here. I am doing well. Thank you. I hope everything's good with you and the fam. Good to see you. Phil Bond. Mentally challenged. He may have thought the buccal swab was a test for spit. Therefore, if his spit was found. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't put anything into that. I just don't get it. It's like this weird duality with, with their arguments. Like on one side, this guy's inept and pretty much incoherent. But on the other hand, he's a viable suspect. Which one is it? Fig says, Sherry, Elvis asked about the spit because they just took saliva from his mouth via a mouth swab, and he is mentally challenged. Yep, that's pretty much what Anna said. I mean, it makes sense. But if you take anything and twist it to try to fit into your narrative, sometimes you can skew things to the point they're unrecognizable. Before you know it, you have Elvis Fields riding on top of a black Ford Focus, waving, shaped like a rune. Okay, let's move on here. Pretty much caught up on the chat. Let's go to Ivy Rose before we continue. I picture them explaining to him that the swab was to see if they could match him to the scene. I think it being a saliva sample is what made him ask. Yeah, that's what Anna and Fig were saying. Yeah, we already talked about that, Ivy. Why don't you come up with your own stuff? So people take a mentally challenged person's confession as gospel, but the one who's charged with double murder and confessed 60 times is false. Exactly. That's what I'm logical fallacy. Thank you, Mustang. Badass in the building. In the UK and Australia, they swab everyone in an area after a murder looking for a suspect. Now I think Australian police checkpoints is mandatory to be DNA swabbed. I was just fucking with you, Ivy. All right, raising the defense. This type of evidence can only be raised where there is sufficient evidence to connect a third party to the offense. Now, do we have that here with the Delphi third-party suspects? This will turn on the question of sufficient relevancy and probative value. The alternative suspect must have a sufficient provable connection to the offense and cannot simply be speculative. The evidence cannot simply be evidence of propensity or suggestive of hypothetical motive. Now, propensity is kind of like the stuff they were bringing forward with Ron Logan. Like he has a history of violence. They actually have to connect you to the crime. And I think they kind of did maybe a little bit, I don't know, a little bit more with Ron Logan than they did with any of these other folks. However, a specific propensity to commit a particular offense can be sufficient. So the evidence must nevertheless still comply with regular rules of evidence. This includes the requirement that the evidence be relevant and admissible on the issue of identity and establish sufficient connection between the third party and the offense, right? So interpreting sticks as runes and then saying, "Oh, well, this guy has a bunch of runes on his Facebook, you have to allow it." It's not that easy. Air of reality. Before the evidence can be considered, the accused must show that there is an air of reality to the defense of another suspect. There must be a basis upon which a properly instructed jury could acquit. It is considered essential that the alternative suspect's evidence have sufficient connection with the offense as evidence of opportunity. Merely providing disposition or motive evidence will not be sufficient to be admissible. As the regular rules dictate, charged offenses cannot be used to infer disposition. So, to me, we're basically outlining all the reasons that they will not allow these third party suspects in the Delphi case to be admitted as evidence. Yeah, exactly. Well, Ivy says, I also think that Elvis said something about horns, and that's where Abby had horns theory originated from, instead of the defense actually seeing horns. Well, the defense didn't say horns. They said that Elvis Fields said horns, but they called them antlers, right? Because when you see a bunch of weeds and sticks on the ground, they don't look like horns. They look more like antlers, but antlers are not horns. If you guys did not know that. Well, technically, badass, they didn't see Richard Allen. Richard Allen kind of threw himself under the bus by saying, well, I saw those girls. And the girls that are saying they saw him are also saying the person that they saw is the man on the bridge in Libby's video. So he kind of snitched on himself, really. Yeah, who knows what Elvis's reasoning is? And it really is irrelevant until you can put him in Delphi, right? Do you have evidence that ties him to the crime scene? Do you have evidence that puts him in Delphi that day? Then I think it would be pretty interesting. Yeah, don't say Ron Logan 3 times. Vic says the FBI BAU determined there was nothing Odinist about the crime scene. Therefore, whoever is connected to Odinism is irrelevant to this case, unless there is some other type of evidence to link them. I'll agree with that. And the sticks, that's all subjective. Yeah, we might find out, badass. And Sleuth, why did the FBI leave this case? Well, the only reason they were involved is when the evidence leads them across state lines, or if they need to use their facilities or something like that. Once they had their suspect and he's local, it also tells me that they didn't believe it was an internet crime. So that kind of helps excluding the whole Anthony Shots thing. The fact that they weren't there. Then also them kind of blaming the FBI for fucking up the tip. And we don't know the truth about that. So maybe we're over here throwing Dan Doolin under the bus, but really it could have been the FBI dropping the ball. Ivy says antlers equal horns. Antlers are not horns by definition. Oh, we got a scrub report coming out from Yankee Ghost. This just in. 118 in chat and only 48 thumbs up. Make sure you guys hit the thumbs up, like, make sure you're subscribed, and go share the video so we can get some folks in here and hear what they got to say about it. Oh, shout out to Cindy Lean, repping the Sleuth crew. Thank you so much. Shout out to Frank, Melissa Wildcard with the Flex, and Cindy for sponsoring today's live stream. And we haven't even scratched the surface yet. What do you think about the Kleins? I'm not sure. I am not sure. I am not sure. You know, just because we haven't seen evidence doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I'm open to changing the trajectory here based on the evidence. Or probability even, right? Yep, I agree. I think I missed this one. Fig says, yeah, there weren't antlers or horns at the crime scene or anything meant to look like antlers or horns. The girls were on top of branches, twigs, woody material that has been there for years. Yeah, CJK. I've definitely done my bashing. It's upsetting, you know. You want to hold somebody in his position in high regard, you just find it strange how somebody can overlook something like that, something so important. You know, even if the FBI did mess up filing that tip, how does he not bring it back up? Like, hey guys, did you go check on this? Like, I don't know. I think we're going to learn more about that in the future. Fig says the FBI was brought into very specialized specific things, which is normal unless they are the lead on an investigation, which they weren't. When the FBI completes these tasks, they move on. Yep, no proof the Kleins were there or took part. And again, you guys are asking about Elvis Fields. What about Keegan Klein saying that him and his father, took part in the crime? Why do people do that? The number one answer, I think, is just attention. You know, just because I say something, you're going to have to prove it. But if I say something, that I'm going to get all these YouTubers all worked up, I'm going to get on the murder sheet again. I'm going to get all this money sent to me so I could chat and get my honey buns from the commissary. Thank you, Don. Yeah, the FBI is like backup, it's like a tag team. Robin B, welcome in. Joey says, I think Keegan Klein was involved. Hold on, guys. Hang tight. It'll just be a second. All right, guys. Sorry about that. Just dealing with some family stuff. Hey, what's up, Tim Perry? You got to follow the evidence. It can take you away from somebody and then bring you right back. You don't want to get tunnel vision. Fig says, I wonder if KK got such a harsh punishment for wasting so much of law enforcement's time and money. To me, he's one of those repeat offender types. Like they'll let him out, he'll get comfortable, and then he'll just start doing some sick shit again. He'll just try to do it better next time, try to get away with it. Take measures to not getting caught. Okay, rebuttal evidence. When raising alternate suspect evidence, the Crown is permitted to present reply evidence that it would not otherwise be allowed to adduce. Where evidence of an alternative suspect is raised, there is a risk that the trier of fact would be left with the wrong impression about the insufficiency of the investigation. Accordingly, the Crown will be permitted to lead evidence on the investigative process that includes hearsay and bad character evidence of the accused. Okay, let's go ahead and let's get into some of these cases here. So we're going to show two cases. One is Clay Shabat. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. And then Anthony Bedolla out of Indiana. Now, these are people who had exculpatory evidence withheld that was pointing at third-party suspects. And in some cases, it wasn't allowed in or it was ignored. Things along those lines. So I think we'll start here. This article about Anthony Bedolla. Let me share my screen. Right. Indiana news, man freed after serving 14 years for crime he did not commit. Yeah, Ivy. I mean, it kind of ties in if he was there with Richard Allen being the bridge guy, and then him and his dad going in through the cemetery. Richard Allen was kind of leaving from the cemetery from east to west. So that would kind of explain why he was there. But you would have to prove that they were there, and you can't take Kagan Klein's word for it, especially when they had his phone connected to a Wi-Fi. So good to see you, Cindy. Thanks for the super chat. Welcome in, Linda. When they interviewed Richard Allen, he said he didn't have an answer for the bullet being at the crime scene because he doesn't allow anyone to use his gun. Yeah, and that hurt him. If he would have said, well, yeah, I lent somebody out my gun, that would have probably bought him a little bit more time. Maybe. I don't know too much about epilepsy. Mustang agrees, Sleuth, but there will be something worse than CSAM next time. Yeah, if you are involved in CSAM and looking up dead children and on the dark web, it's a precursor. You're working your way up. You're living in this fantasy world, and in that fantasy, you're thinking about hurting children and committing murders and things like that. Eventually, you're gonna move to the real thing. You're gonna start with gateway crimes, hurting animals, lighting fires, and then before you know it, you're attempting to kidnap children. Wife Lola says, "I'll take the label of being crazy Who called you crazy? Because it's going to take a lot more to convince me that Kleins aren't involved, and neither is Rick. They know each other, and they didn't randomly victimize the same. I would like to see a connection. I think that there could be something there. I have sources that tell me that it exists. But unless I can hold it in my hand and wave it around, I have to kind of set it aside. But just because I don't know something or I don't see the evidence doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And I'll follow the evidence. Like I said, it could take me away and it can bring me even closer than before. I think the Crown, meaning the prosecution. No, it's not British law. It's a legal term. Fig says Ivy involved in quotations is a very vague word. It could mean aiding and abetting, accessory after the fact, or people who might have obstructed justice. Yeah, there might be something there, Ivy. There might be something that even Kagan Klein doesn't even know about. You know, we know that he was online exchanging information with people all over Indiana, not to mention he was on the dark web. So he may be involved and not even realize it. And also be providing a false confession, you know, for attention. Just like Elvis Fields, just like Brad Holder, until the evidence says otherwise. I don't want to put blinders on. What was that specific time growing crazy? There's not a lot of people that know more about the information about Caden Klein than me. I've done my homework. Fig says if Richard Allen used two different weapons, law enforcement might have thought there were two killers, or if they saw multiple footprints, or if they misconstrued geofencing data. I think it's possible that Richard Allen stripped down. I think he scrubbed his clothes, stripped down, stripped the girls down, attempted to redress them, was interrupted, couldn't finish, redressed himself, and then left. To me, that tells a story of a disorganized killer. Somebody who maybe didn't plan to kill, maybe somebody who was even up all night. That could explain why he was dressed the way he was. He could have been up while it was cold and then well into the morning, maybe even up all night doing God knows what. Tweaking for all we know. He said might, possibly. Yeah, exactly. But I've had some of the sources that I've developed who actually went to school with Richard Allen. They know the Kleins as well. And they say even though they don't know for sure that they're connected or that they still communicate, when they were younger, they would all hang out in a similar area and had similar friends. Joey, I think that was before they knew the details. But yeah, bullet evidence, tool mark evidence. I mean, that's what helped convict Murdoch and plenty of others. And they've done blind studies on that, and it's the error ratio is lower than 1%. I mean, it's solid evidence, 100%. It's the reason Richard Allen's in jail right now. It's the reason he'll get convicted too. Even the defense hired experts to check that same evidence, and they came to the same conclusion. They said this came from your client's gun. They fired them, and Nick McClellan was listed as ex parte, and he was going to pick them up as witnesses. And he still could have, because it's not his responsibility to keep that confidential. So the defense team, they leaked that information. Nick was able to see it, and he was going to use him as a witness. That would have been huge for his team, to call the defense's witness and them now to be a witness for the prosecution. And that's a slam dunk. But even Nick said, we don't need it. I'm going to say no for ethical reasons. We have enough. We don't need that. So yeah, that's one of the main reasons I think we're going to see a plea deal. The confessions now that they're being allowed, and that the judge has ruled that that he wasn't coerced or under duress, I guess, which is huge. Who has the scrub report? Okay, we're all caught up pretty much. Yeah, Cindy, and I believe that they can use it, but I'm glad he didn't use it. He doesn't need to hit below the belt. Just because they go low doesn't mean you have to go low. You always want to take that high road. All right, man freed after serving 14 years for a crime he did not commit by Deja Studdard. A man has been set free after spending more than 14 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit. Anthony Bedolla, a Mexican national, was exonerated after he was convicted of a murder. Oh, looks like I cut off something of offense, and occurred in a parking lot outside of an Indianapolis nightclub in February of 2010. Following a bench trial, Bedolla, was sentenced to 45 years in prison. After more than 14 years, a Marion County Superior Court overturned his convictions after... I wish I wouldn't have cut that off. Evidence cleared him of the crimes just last week. Anthony Bedolla, front and center, is pictured with EJC founder and director, Professor Jimmy Garul, Elliot Sloser, Adam Miller, Cynthia Carter, Kevin Murphy, whose efforts were crucial in securing Bedolla's exoneration. Through our joint collaborative efforts, we have addressed, confronted, and corrected a tragic miscarriage of justice, said Professor Jimmy Garue, founder and director of Notre Dame Law School's Exoneration Justice Clinic. In wrongful conviction cases, not only is an innocent person convicted and deprived of his freedom for a crime that he didn't commit, but the real killer remains at large and is not held accountable. So really, it's a double tragedy and injustice to society. For nearly 2 years, the Exoneration Justice Clinic at Notre Dame Law School investigated this case in collaboration with the Marion County Prosecutor's Office and the Conviction Integrity Unit. In a press release from the University of Notre Dame, the Notre Dame Law School said, Garue stated that the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department engaged in gross police misconduct by withholding substantial exculpatory evidence of an alternative suspect, the real killer, The department also withheld exculpatory evidence that would have seriously undermined the credibility of the critical prosecution witness in the case. The lead detective also testified falsely at trial and during a deposition, which led to Mr. Bedolla's wrongful conviction. This was a violation of Bedolla's constitutional rights, said Garouye. Our client was deprived of the fundamental right to a fair trial because the police knowingly withheld material exculpatory evidence. All right. Is that what is going on with the Delphi case? Did the investigation team or the prosecution knowingly withhold material exculpatory evidence? On Tuesday, August 20th, the Marion County Superior Court granted a written motion filed by the state to dismiss the pending criminal charges against Bedolla with prejudice, officially exonerating Bedolla, and was released from prison on Thursday. Indiana failed Mr. Bedolla over and over and stole 14 irretrievable years. We owe it to Anthony and to all who are wrongly convicted to do better, said Adam Miller, the third-year law student at Notre Dame. This moment took years. Today we celebrate that he is free, vindicated, and reunited with his family. So I think I have a quick video here of him. Actually being released. So after spending 15 years, recent investigation by the Marion County Conviction Integrity Unit and Notre Dame Exoneration Justice Clinic found troubling new information that someone else had committed the crime. And an IMPD detective failed to disclose several pieces of evidence pointing to another suspect. Hold on. I had two versions of this open. Former IMPD detective Ed Brinkley, the lead investigator on the case, denied allegations of wrongdoing and said, "I stand by everything I did in this investigation." Apparently, this is Anthony being released.
This case really has like a lot of hallmarks of wrongful convictions in terms of eyewitness misidentifications. The witness that implicated Anthony here was a government informant, and some of the Brady evidence that was.
See, so they had a government informant here kind of pointing the finger at him. And that's another reason that they shouldn't allow people like Keegan Kline and what they have to say. You know, they're just not credible.
Uncovered and never disclosed really would have cut against the credibility that she had in this case and other cases. I think what stands out about this case is how quickly the police closed it.
Right.
It was
Lucky.
a murder investigation with hundreds of people at a nightclub, and the detective interviewed less than 5 and closed the case essentially during a week. You know, in many ways, the police investigation here is consistent with an idea that some people are disposable, and I can't imagine a situation where
Everybody has to inject their
victims here of
politics into
different race,
everything.
the police would have done the same investigation that they did here. There was really no investigation done to charge Anthony Bedolla with murder.
I mean, you meet him and he's gentle and he's meek and he's soft spoken.
This guy has a
Elliot and I
crush
have
on him.
joked that like he's the kind of guy that you would like want your daughter to bring home. Right? He's the kind of guy that I can't imagine killing a spider.
Thank you, Yankee.
Can you talk about how your wrongful imprisonment affected you and your family?
Oh, affected bad because I innocent all the time, and I'm missing all the my family. Ya acabo de salir ahorita.
I have to really give a shout out to the Conviction Integrity Unit for that. They're huge.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that they're the only conviction integrity unit in the
Shout
entire
out to
state of
Yankee
Indiana.
Ghost hooking it up.
And again, they have limited jurisdiction only for Marion County prosecutions. And I think this particular case highlights the value of a CIU again in pursuing and achieving justice. And I think the need for more CIUs across the state of Indiana.
Not that I know about
Some
us.
states like Michigan actually have a statewide CIU that operates out of the state attorney general's office. And so again, if there's a commitment, a true commitment to doing justice and correcting the miscarriage of justice, we need more CIUs in Indiana to assist in that process.
Precisamente que prueben la corrupción, que hagan su trabajo derecho como debe de ser. Pues todo.
Wants them to do their work the right way.
Right, spit right down.
Sí, su trabajo lo que debe de ser.
Porque usted no quiere que alguien como usted.
So what do you guys think? You think that's what's going on with Richard Allen? You think they're withholding information that could exonerate him? Where do you think the doubt is, Sherry? What's the doubt? I have no doubt that Richard Allen was there and that scientifically they'll prove that the bullet came from his gun, which ties him to the crime scene. Where's the doubt in that? Not to mention nobody's seen him after. They saw him coming into the trails. Nobody saw him after that. So I'll include the timeline on that too. Not to mention he has no alibi. You're right, Sandollar. Where's the alibi? Innocent until proven guilty is for a court of law. And also it's for sentencing. It's not for detaining somebody. Not reality, absolute truth. People can be guilty, but then made innocent, or innocent and then made guilty in a court of law. Doesn't mean it's fact. Yeah, what is it? Adnan Syed case? This is pretty interesting. I don't know if I said his name right. All right, let's take a look at this case here. Wrongfully convicted man who spent 22 years in prison relocates to Southwest Florida. He has his own filmographer now. He's in the Truman Show. Clay Shabat, is that how you say that? Clay Shabat is telling his story. Like many others in our community, Shabat moved to Southwest Florida a little later in life. Other than the heat, I love Florida. I love the water. I always have and need sunshine, Shabat said. But Shabat does not have a unique twist, in his story. Born in Ohio, joined the military, and served in the Navy. Once discharged, he moved to Texas, and he and his wife had a son. In 1986, Shabat's life changed. He spent 22 years in a Texas prison after being wrongly convicted. I'd just gotten out of the military 1 year before, so believed the justice, just like everybody else as a kid. And I thought the truth would prevail, but all I had to do was tell the truth, Shabat said. He was convicted for the rape and murder of a woman he and his wife were friends with. His brother-in-law pointed the finger at Shabat. So they went to him with the same story or the same deal, they said. Hey, will you testify against Clay? And sure enough, he did. He got on the stand, said we were both there, and that he pulled the trigger, Shabat said. After decades in prison, the Innocence Project got involved and helped get him out. DNA evidence would later match Shabat's brother-in-law. Always kept 1 foot out, 1 foot in. I watched a lot of people in there, and they just gave up, and they delve into prison life, join the gangs or whatever. I didn't do that. I got educated when I was in there, kept myself busy, Shabat said. Shabat or Cabot? Kabat. He obtained several degrees while in prison and moved to Florida the morning after his release. Now remarried, he lives happily with his wife in Fort Myers. Shabat maintained his innocence throughout his time in prison. At times, he felt like giving up, but in his mind, he knew he was innocent, and now the rest of the world does too. Well, I think he took an Alford plea, kind of like the West Memphis Three. Here's an interview with him.
And I were watching the news. I think I was preparing dinner. I really wasn't paying attention to the TV, but I flash recalled that after they made the statement, and I heard my wife exclaim, "That's Gayla! That's Gayla!" After we saw that news, I immediately started thinking about my brother-in-law, because the night before he had come to the house and returned some hours later and returned a gun he had taken from his sister. And within hours, his wife came down to our house and told us that they had arrested him and revealed that apparently they had found a witness that saw his car in the driveway or near the home. Bloody clothes they confiscated from him. Pawn tickets for some of the merchandise that he had taken out of the home, and some of the stuff, a TV apparently that he had stolen and was in his house. Well, apparently they talked to him, and within, I think, just that same evening, he turned around and told them that I had borrowed his car, that I'd given him the stolen merchandise that he had pawned and the TV that he had in his house, and that he didn't know anything about it, but he was sleeping somewhere. I don't know if he said he was home or not, but anyway, so they arrested me. They eventually came and said, "Listen, we don't think you actually committed the murder, but we need a witness to testify. If you'll testify against him, we'll let you go." And I told him, "You're asking me to lie. I don't know what this guy did or not. And I didn't know enough about the system. I believed in it. I thought, justice would prevail, and all I had to do is tell the truth and cooperate." And so I refused. And as it turns out, they went to him with the same deal.
All right, because of time, we're going to continue on here. Well, there's another example, and he took an Alford plea. He pled guilty. They said, "We're going to let you out, and you'll be free for the rest of your life, and we'll never be able to charge you again. But you will have a murder conviction on your record." So that's kind of a strange situation. But it's different than Richard Allen's situation, because he's not confessing. He's not putting blame on anybody. He's just simply saying, "I don't know how my bullet got there. Yeah, I was there. Yeah, I saw those girls. I didn't see the victims. And I had nothing to do with their murders." And they're saying, "Well, we know you were there. We have witnesses that put you there. You put yourself there. And now we can tie you to the crime scene." So we know you had something to do with this. That's the case against Richard Allen. At least that's what's listed in the probable cause affidavit. They've had 5 years almost, 3 years to further that investigation. So who knows what else they have. Okay, I think we should go to the Sarah Cherry case. This is an awful one here. Let me see where we can start here. Maybe right here.
And convicted of one of Maine's most notorious murder cases, Dennis DeShane is serving a life sentence for the 1988 murder of 12-year-old Sarah Cherry. DeShane has appealed his conviction to the state's highest court because he says there is evidence that could exonerate him. WMTW News 8's Jim Keithley was in the courtroom today and spoke with the victim's family.
Dennis DeShane is 57 years old now. He was not in the courtroom for today's proceedings. He's maintained his innocence for 27 years, with the family of Sarah Cherry wondering if or when it will ever end.
Yeah, actually, I hope I die knowing he's still in prison. He'll never get out. And I plan on living another 20, 25 years.
Dennis DeShane is appealing his conviction for the 5th time. His attorneys arguing that DNA found under Sarah Cherry's fingernails point to another male suspect. Prosecutors say that DNA has been contaminated and that they have a mountain of evidence against the Bodenham farmer.
On July 6, 1988, Dennis DeShane kidnapped 12-year-old Sarah Cherry, brought her into the woods, tortured her, sexually assaulted her, and strangled her. In the days after that, he walked into a lawyer's office. He told that lawyer that he murdered Sarah Cherry.
Deb Crossman is Sarah Cherry's mother. She rarely has given interviews, but today, outside the courthouse, she says she's convinced that Dennis DeShane is the man who murdered her daughter.
Every time we have a hearing or anything in the news, it brings it all over again. And especially when they talk about Sarah and what he did to her. That really bothers me.
DeShane has his supporters.
And I really think these judges should take it upon themselves, end this case, bring it to court, let us have a trial and show all the evidence, especially the evidence that was hidden at trial. That's all we ask for.
Prosecutors telling the 4 Supreme Court justices today that DeShane's latest appeal is a mockery.
For the last 25 years, Dennis DeShane has been perpetrating a fraud upon the courts and the people of the state of Maine by suggesting that he is not guilty.
This case isn't over, and it won't be over until justice is done. The just result here would be a new trial, which is what we're asking for under this statute. If the court ends up in denying a new trial, it's highly likely that this case will then go to federal court.
And the waiting continues for the Cherry family, who've been told that the Supreme Court justices might take a month to rule in this latest appeal. In Portland, Jim Keith.
Okay. So they found evidence tying him to a stick that he used to sexually torture this young woman, or this young girl, excuse me. And a cloth that belonged to him was used to strangle her. But there was blood underneath her fingernail, one of her fingernails, that didn't belong to the suspect. So that's why people believe that he may be innocent. I don't know how that makes him innocent. I think it's just possible that for whatever reason she had blood under her fingernails. It might even mean others were involved.
Convicted in 1988 of kidnapping and murdering a 12-year-old girl, now has a chance to get a new trial.
It comes after lab tests didn't show his DNA on several items found at the crime scene. Recent Remains Ann Baldrige joins us now with more on the case. Ann?
Hey, Chris and Zach, Dennis DeShane has been in prison for 35 years since a jury found him guilty of murdering 12-year-old Sarah Cherry from Bowdoin. Results from DNA testing done in 2022 excluded DeShane from 3 of 6 crime scene objects found and collected at the crime scene. A judge has agreed to hear his testimony about the DNA testing and will decide if it's enough to grant DeShane a new trial. We take a look back at this case, and we do want to warn you that some of these details will be disturbing to some viewers.
Hey, Charlotte.
Almost 4 years now since I was arrested. And here you sit interviewing me because this case is controversial. I mean, doesn't that reflect reasonable doubt?
That interview with Dennis DeShane happened 35 years ago. And all of these years later, DeShane is still attempting to get a new trial. Sarah Cherry was 12 years old and babysitting at a home in Bowdoin in 1988. Neighbors reported hearing someone pull into the driveway that afternoon and heard the family's dogs barking. In the driveway the mother Sherry was babysitting for found a receipt and a notebook with the name Dennis DeShane on them. But DeShane has always claimed he's innocent.
Somebody clearly took 2 items with my name on it, placed them there specifically to put them.
In 2022, DeShane's lawyer, John Nail, asked for a hearing to submit new evidence showing that the blood found underneath the victim's fingertips was not his client's. 6 items related to the homicide were examined and compared to both DeShane's blood and the victim's blood found under her thumbnail. DeShane was excluded from DNA found on 3 of the 6 items. Those include a stick that was used for sexual torture and a scarf used to strangle Sarah Cherry. DeShane will appear in Knox County Court April 18th and 19th, where his lawyers will argue the new DNA results from testing done in November.
I mean, you have to ask yourself, what is his DNA doing on that stick that was used to sexually torture her? Why would your DNA be anywhere near that stick? You know, who cares if there's some unidentified blood under her nail? Kids are playing with other kids, and who knows what they're up to? It was your scarf that was used to strangle her, and the stick that was used to abuse her. Your DNA is all over that stick. Boom. Done deal.
Of 2022 merit a new trial. The judge agreed to let DeShane's attorney John Nail call in a DNA expert who can contextualize the new test results as long as the lab employee who actually conducted the test testifies as well. Well, DeShane's defense will not be allowed to call his former attorney to testify on his behalf. At the end of all of this, for Sarah Cherry's loved ones, it's about the tragic death of a 12-year-old girl. Cherry's grandmother said this 20 years after DeShane was arrested.
Talented, smart. She had a great future ahead of her, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure he stays where he belongs. And may he rot in hell after that.
We will bring you an update when Dennis DeShane goes to court in April to find out if he'll be granted that new trial. Chris and Zach.
All right, let's go to the chat for a little bit here. Hiawatha says, could the connection be that Brad Holder's son was dating one of the murdered girls? It is a connection. It's not a connection to the crime, right? It's just a connection between Logan Holder and Abby Williams. But that doesn't connect him to the crime, so that wouldn't count. Is it interesting? Can you pile that on top of other things that might be a connection? Yes. Okay, I had a whole lot. Well, I think we'll cover this case at another point. I have 3 articles, but because of time, I want to keep moving on here. Let's go to the Sophie Sergy case.
From Auburn, who police say raped and murdered a woman in Alaska nearly 3 decades ago, is fighting his extradition back to that state.
News Center's Clay Gordon was there today when Stephen Downs made his first court appearance.
Walking into Lewiston District Court in shackles and chains, Stephen Harris Downs appears before Judge John Martin as a fugitive of justice, accused of a crime outside of the state. According to court documents filed in Alaska, Downs had no criminal record leading up to the day in 1993 when Sophie Sergy, visiting friends at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, was found dead in a dorm bathroom, one floor below where Downs, a student at UAF, lived. He's now charged with raping Sergy and murdering her.
The defendant's facing such serious charges in another state. The state is asking for the defendant to be held without bail.
He thinks there must be some mistake. He's asking the court to consider setting bail at $5,000 cash.
Under those circumstances, hold Mr. Downs without bail.
Downs was arrested Friday. Police were led to him when DNA from the 1993 crime.
No, Linda K. Johnson. His DNA was found on the stick.
Scene was a partial match to one of Downs' aunts who had taken a DNA test and became part of a nationwide database. A DNA swab taken from Downs a few years ago was a positive match for the crime scene sample. He's been working as a registered nurse here in Maine. In separate incidents in 2016 and 2017, two co-workers at the Harris House, a nursing care facility in Livermore Falls, told officials Downs made statements or acted in ways that made them feel uncomfortable. He was later fired for what the owners of Harris House called a totality of substandard performance. He is currently unemployed. But before attending the University of Alaska Fairbanks, Downs graduated from here, Edward Little High School, in 1992. His yearbook says he ran cross country and track and was in a drama club. Because he didn't waive extradition, Downs is staying in Maine for now.
Well, he's contesting. He doesn't want to go back to Alaska. He doesn't feel like he should have to go back to Alaska, and he feels like he's innocent of the allegations.
Only a warrant from Alaska's governor will send him to the last frontier. In Lewiston, Clay Gordon.
From Auburn, who police say raped and murdered.
All right, I think I have a couple more here on this case. Okay, defense attorneys for defendant Stephen Downs raised many theories about the alternative suspects who may have killed Sophie Sergy in a college dormitory bathroom in 1993. The defense attorneys for defendant Stephen Downs raised many theories about alternative suspects who may have killed Sophie Sergy in a college dormitory bathroom in 1993. Downs is charged with first-degree murder, first-degree sexual assault. Closing arguments will be heard today, and jury deliberations may begin this afternoon. Defense attorney James Howanick says other men might have committed this crime, according to leads followed by investigators in the years after the murder. One was Kenneth Moto. Moto testified Thursday he remembers being interviewed by James McCann, the Alaska State Trooper sergeant who led the investigation. When McCann flew to Zotsbu in 1996, Moto appeared in court on a muffled video conference saying he volunteered then to give a DNA sample because he wanted to help in any way he could solve a crime against a native person. I volunteered because I wanted to help any way I can, because if she's native, we can't have that happen to native people, he said. Howaniak says Moto watched a description given to investigators by a student who lived in Bartlett Hall in the spring of 1993. Melanie Manuk said Segunik described a man she saw coming out of the tub room in a woman's bathroom as 5 feet 8 inches tall, with black hair and wearing a gray t-shirt. McCann interviewed Moto 2 days later and jotted in his notebook the guy coming out of the bathroom, but McCann testified last week, January 25th, that no was just a hunch to help inform the interview. Moto's sister Karen had told troopers in a 2009 interview that her brother said he confessed to the murder at a UAF, but Karen Moto died in 2018. Defense attorney James Howaniak asked Moto about the conversation with his sister. In quotes, "And do you remember telling Karen at any point that you had killed Sophie Sergy?" he asked. "Nope, never," Moto replied. "You never said that to her?" Howaniak asked. "I remember we were watching something on cold cases in Alaska. It was some kind of show on TV. I told her I was a suspect in Sophie's. I was a suspect in that one at UAF," Moto said. "If I just heard you correctly, you told your sister Karen that you were a suspect in the Sophie Sergy murder," Howaniak asked. "Yep." "Okay," Howaniak said, "but you never told her that you had killed Sophie Sergy?" Never did, Moto replied. Okay, all right, nothing further. Hawaniak also raised the theory of another alternative suspect, Gregory Thornton. He was roommates on the 5th floor of Bartlett Hall in the school year with Reuben Leak. Leak testified Thursday he was familiar with guns and knew Thornton had a .22 caliber pistol. In quotations, I could never say for certain that it was an H&R pistol. It had the shape and the look of an H&R, but I never read the writing on the side of the barrel to say exactly what it is. But it is fairly distinct shape, weight, dimensions, he said. The medical examiner concluded the cause of Sergy's death was a bullet from a .22 caliber weapon. Leak said Thornton was a white man with an olive complexion. Thornton was one of the 2 people a witness, Melanie Segunik, narrowed from a photo lineup a trooper brought to her in Unalakleet in 2004. She testified on January 19th she saw a white man with a darker complexion coming out of the woman's bathroom in the early hours of April 26, 1993, the day when Sergy was found dead hours later. Prosecutors rested their case. Defense arguments will continue Friday, and closing arguments are expected Monday.
A Maine man charged in a young woman's killing 28 years ago at the University of Alaska Fairbanks will be allowed to present evidence about alternative suspects at his trial next month. 47-year-old Stephen Downs was charged with sexual assault and murder and extradited to Alaska after DNA his aunt submitted to a genealogy website matched DNA from the crime scene. The victim, 20-year-old Sophie Sergy of Pickus Point, was shot in the head. Downs was a student at UAF in 1993 and lived in the dorm where Sergy's body was found. The judge ruled that the defense can present evidence about 3 alternative suspects at the trial, which begins on January 3rd. A Maine man charged in a young woman's killing 28 years ago at the University of Alaska Fairbanks will be allowed to present evidence about alternative suspects at his trial next month. 47-year-old Stephen Downs.
So very similar case there. Let's go to the chat. Linda K says, no, Sleuth, go back. I think on one of them they misspoke, but I can go back and show you. The reason that I know is they stated even the scarf was excluded, but the defense even stated that the scarf belonged to the defendant. So even though in that report they may have misspoke, they also included the scarf, right? They said the scarf, the stick, and something else was excluded. So they were just it was just they were misspeaking on that. Because I know for a fact that they found his evidence on the stick. And it also stated there that the scarf and something else and the stick were excluded. But he's already admitted that that was his scarf. And he's claiming that somebody planted the scarf there. And that happens with local media all the time. So I think you're just confused on that. Because he's the same person who's saying that the scarf that was used to strangle her was planted there. Okay, here's another quick one, and then we'll get out of here. Okay, victim's landlord testifies in 3rd day of Jason Tortis trial. John Delphi had dinner and drinks with Kelly Gorham the night before she vanished. The murder trial of Jason Tortis entered its 3rd day this morning at York County Superior Court. Tortis, 29, is accused of killing his ex-fiancée, Kelly Gorham, and burying her body on a remote piece of land owned by his father in northern New Hampshire. Gorham, 30, was last seen alive at her apartment in Alfred on August 7th, 2007. Her body was found 3 weeks later. On the stand this morning is John Delphi, the Alfred resident who rented the apartment to Gorham. In the summer of 2007, Delphi and his wife lived in a main house on the property. Gorham lived in a barn-style garage, and Calvin DeGrenia lived in a pool house. Delphi and DeGrenia had dinner and drinks with Gorham on the night before she vanished. Daniel Lilly, the lawyer for Jason Tortis, had hammered away at the credibility of Delphi. and Degrinia over the past 2 days, primarily by exposing several inconsistencies between their earlier statements to police and their testimony on the stand. Lily's theory is that those two men, not Tortoise, killed Gorham. They have denied any involvement in the crime. The murder trial opened Monday and is expected to run through the end of next week. So that's definitely some circumstantial evidence. Here's a quick video on that.
Well, a judge has sentenced the man convicted of killing his ex-fiancée here in Maine and then dumping her body on his father's property in New Hampshire along the Canadian border. 30-year-old Jason Tortoise will serve 38 years in prison. The sentence was handed down following comments from both Tortoise's family and the family of the victim, Kelly Gorham. News 8's Keith Baldy joins us now with an update. Keith?
Tracy, for 4 years throughout this entire ordeal, Jason Tortoise's family and attorneys have professed his innocence. That was no different today. And one of the reasons Kelly Gorham's family wanted him to serve life was because he showed no remorse. 4 years ago, a community searched for Kelly Gorham, a 30-year-old nursing student living in Alfred who had disappeared. 4 years later, it was a day of reckoning for Jason Tortoise, her ex-fiancé, the man convicted of murdering her.
Single-handedly, Jason, a man who knew our family well, strangled the life out of my sister.
One by one, Kelly Gorham's family members stood in front of a judge and asked for the harshest sentence possible under Maine law, life in prison.
I know that asking for a life sentence shows no mercy, but the defendant has shown no mercy nor remorse in his actions for the time of Kelly's disappearance to this day.
Prosecutors say Tortoise could not let go of his relationship with Kelly, his former fiancée, so he killed her and drove her body to Stewartstown, New Hampshire, where he disposed of her in a shallow grave on his father's property. The murder happened during the week they had planned to go on their honeymoon before they had broken up.
This man is no longer a man. He is a monster. He deserves to be treated as such.
To this day, some of Tortoise's family and his attorneys maintain he is innocent. His father, who at the time of the murder hired a private detective to clear his son, asked the judge for leniency, saying Jason was never violent and could not have committed the crime.
Sound familiar?
He couldn't hurt anyone. I know deep down in my heart he did not do this.
In the end, the judge sentenced Tortoise to 38 years in prison, saying he was not evil, but had committed an evil act. After the sentencing, Tortoise's lawyer Dan Lilly said they will appeal again, this time to the Maine Supreme Court. They continue to argue that another person is responsible for Kelly's death. Live in the news.
All right, guys, we're going to leave the last 12 minutes for open discussion. Let's hear what you got. Yeah, exactly, Sherry. You know, not my kid. Not my baby. Well, it is Friday in the middle of most people's work hours. We can go back here. Let's see. Don says he is not evil, but committed an evil act. What the fuck kind of logic is that? Yeah, that stood out to me too. Lindy, I don't care what they said. I'm looking at it right here. What they said was the DNA evidence could only have come from the person who committed the crime to the exclusion of the defendant. They're not talking about what was on the stick. It's already been proven in court about the stick. So whatever was said in that video, you need to get over it. Nobody's arguing that his DNA is not on the stick. That's not part of his defense. And I think they stated one of the sticks. So there was multiple sticks used. Here, I'll go through the actual probable cause affidavit here. Partial male DNA profiles were found on at least 4 of the 6 crime scene objects that were tested, according to the forensic results. Decane was excluded from DNA found on 3 items: a bra worn by Cherry, 1 of the sticks used to assault her, and the bandana used to gag her. There were multiple sticks used. So I think that's what you're getting confused there. Yeah, but you're not listening, though. And you don't know half of what's going on with this case. You're just trying to derail the conversation. Like, oh, I stumped you, sleuth. Did you know that there was more than 1 stick found at the crime scene? No. You didn't know that, did you? But yet you spent the whole last 30 minutes ignoring everything else and stuck to that. So I'll repeat this. DNA found on 3 items: a bra worn by Cherry, 1 of the sticks used to assault her, and the bandana used to gag her. But his DNA was found on the scarf used to strangle her and 1 of the sticks used to sexually abuse her. Here, I'll even go further. But there wasn't enough data to either include or exclude Decane as a source of DNA on the remaining 3 items: the scarf used to strangle her, her bloodstained t-shirt, and a second stick used in the sexual assault. All right? So that's why I was trying to ignore you so you didn't derail the conversation. That's why I waited to address you at the end, because I knew what you were trying to do. I found something. You didn't even know what you're talking about. Well, don't be so bent set on derailing a conversation because you found something. Oh, you're wrong, sleuth. You know, then I wouldn't have to act this way. You came back in the chat 3 or 4 times. Let's go back and see. Here's one. They just said he was excluded. Here, let me go to another one. Sleuth, I went back to listen. His DNA was definitely excluded. All right. So I wouldn't be acting this way if you weren't doing what you were doing to derail the conversation. It's the price you pay. Don't correct me, Hiawatha. I know you're a supporter. I know you're a member. Don't tell me how to run my chat. Linda K. Johnson knows what she did, and I addressed it. That's it. I didn't say there was bad intent. I just said you were trying to derail the conversation because you found an error. And I tried to ignore it. I ignored it the first time. And then you had to come back with this. And then you had to come back with this. Like you're fighting for truth and I'm not. Right? I'm fighting for truth in all matters. When in fact you were wrong. So all I did was address it. Nobody's trying to humiliate you. And nobody's trying to be harsh, sister. All right, this is going to be our 5-minute warning. Is there anything else we'd like to add? Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate that. I mean, you guys heard that I was dealing with something. So I'm trying to juggle this, and then I got to deal with every individual chat member. So I want to give a shout out to Frank with the super sticker, Melissa with the 5-month flex, Cindy, thank you so much, and the generosity of Yankee. So you guys actually lucked out. All of you folks who were just given a free membership, we're doing a giveaway in about a week. So that's going to be a members only giveaway. So all of you will be included in that. And I'm looking forward to it. Cindy says, I commented earlier that I think the prosecution is ready to defend all angles that are allowed. And after we kind of described what constitutes an alternative suspect, an alternate suspect, I'm just not seeing that that's what we're dealing with the Delphi case. So I'm leaning towards that it will be thrown out if it hasn't already. I'm just not seeing any connection to the actual crime itself. You know, it's all just pretty much speculation and a lot of weird Facebook stuff, right? And at some point, they're going to have to answer for the fact that they spent 12 grand to go get a photograph that was already on Brad Holder's Facebook. Why did you need to spend 12 grand to go meet this guy, Bobby Boucher, I think down in Georgia? So, and today there was a report that they spent over $1 million on this case. The majority of that being on the defense of Richard Allen. And then the stuff that the prosecution spent was really logistical stuff like computers, stuff for the courtroom. I think they needed a barricade or something like that just to make sure they had the proper security. I think $1 million and they budgeted for $2 million. That's crazy. All right, guys, if there's nothing else, that's going to conclude today's live stream. Yeah, that's not his name. His last name is Boucher. I'm kind of shitting on him with that. So his last name's Boucher, and I call him Bobby Boucher. And if you're part of the replay crew, leave me a comment. And if you guys need to get a hold of me directly, just shoot me an email at sleuthintuition@gmail.com. And if anything, I'll take a look. Yeah, Linda K, no hard feelings. Just don't be distracting my chat when I'm trying to, especially when I'm trying to put all this information and convey it the best that I can. I don't need you distracting the chat like that, but we're good. We're good. Just try to control yourself next time. What's up, Shay? Yep, and we're about to get out of here. Ziggy. All right, guys, I'll catch you on the next one. You guys have a safe weekend. And members, keep an eye out for the for any notifications pertaining to a live stream over the weekend and the merch giveaway. And congratulations to Phil Bond and Hiawatha for winning some merch on the last spin. So I'll catch you guys again real soon. Take care.